Hello, this is Dr. Kelly Keeney. Welcome to the Wild Mandala podcast. Thanks for being here. It's just funny, I tend to just always be inspired to record these when I'm out on little happy hacking rides with my sweet mare Daria. So that's where we're at today, taking a little gentle eating and sauntering ride out on the trails. But yeah, today I wanted to just check in and speak a little bit in the theme of our upcoming newsletter, which is going to have a kitty theme. We feel like we've kind of left kitties out thus far of a lot of our educational stuff, and they are a big part of my heart and practice as a veterinarian. So I wanted to do a little kitty happiness episode and just speak to some of the things that from my perspective are important for kitties' well-being. This is a big topic, of course, and I won't get to touch on everything. And of course there's, the very first kind of fundamental difference for kitties and how they live is whether they're allowed to go outside or not. And I'm not going to dive into that conversation. There's a lot of opinions about whether to allow kitties outside, and this kind of idea around outdoor cats. There's barn cats, there's kitties that just go out during the day, then there's kitties that just have free reign and go out day and night as they choose, and there's all different ways people do it, and I think it's too big of a topic to cover. So this podcast is going to be focused more on just health and happiness for kitties that are indoor kitties, and that is my recommendation, is to have kitties be kept indoors. It's wonderful if you can have a catio or some option for them to go out and experience the outdoors and be able to climb up on a tree or something that's in the catio and have little ability to roll in the dirt and all the things, and then that's kind of a lovely middle ground that I think is doable for most families to create that option and then keep their kitties a little bit safer. I always joke around, cats are like not fully domesticated. I mean, they're very wild still in their beings. I mean, I think their relationships with their human family, it's just symbiotic for them. They definitely choose it, and they could actually survive on their own without us, which isn't really true of most of our domestic animals. So they're very connected to their wildness, and it's a beautiful energy they bring to all of us, just that, that connection with their essential selves and their instincts. And so that's kind of my focus when I think about wellness fundamentals for kitties. And we did just come out with our Canine Wellness Fundamentals course, and I'm going to be doing a sister course for cats where I dive deeper into all these things. But I just wanted to touch on a few of the main things. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is nutrition for cats. They're very picky sometimes not, but they're very specific in what they need. And another big topic I'm not going to go into is meat versus vegetarian diets for cats and dogs. I'm a proponent of the meat diets. I think there's ways to ethically source meat for our animals. I think biologically that's just the most appropriate for them. Cats are obligate carnivores, and they also have a key need that everyone should know about, which is they need to have that essential amino acid taurine supplemented to their diet, or they can end up with irreversible heart disease. And I've seen it in my career for sure for kitties that did not have taurine supplementation in their diets. So it's very important to know that. They tend to do best with high protein, meat-based, low carbohydrate diets that are fresh or water-based. If you need to feed a processed food, then canned would be far better than kibble. Cats tend to be very sensitive in their kidney and urinary systems, and they just tend to run kind of fundamentally dehydrated as a species. And so encouraging water consumption in all the ways we can for kitties and feeding them a high water-based diet, which would come in fresh food. And like I said, canned over kibble would be better in that regard. It's just by far better for them. They do tend to eat small meals more frequently, so a lot of kitties do better with at least twice a day food, feeding options, and even like, another time or two just where they get like a little treat-based games or something with freeze-dried food or something. Cats are nocturnal, and so sometimes people find that they're getting hassled in the night by their kitties, and so some kind of a freeze-dried food that could be dispensed in the night or something isn't the worst thing, and some kitties really need that nighttime food dispensing option just to kind of stay peaceful in the home. So yeah, nutrition is important for them. Cats, of all the domestic species I work with, I'd say cats probably like change the least, and every change with them needs to be very very slow, and they're very sensitive to changes in tastes. They're very sensitive to changes in texture, changes in lifestyle, household dynamics, just anything. So introducing all change slowly is definitely best for kitties. Another interesting thing just about their diet is that, if they're also sensitive to upper respiratory issues, and if they can't smell their food, they won't eat. So that's just something to know about kitties. If you're running into appetite issues and they have like a snotty nose or something, that can be a real thing, and they can actually slip into a state of anorexia. So it's just really important to treat those things so that they can maintain eating. Cats don't do great with any extended periods where they don't eat. They're predisposed to hepatic lipidosis with longer term kind of anorexic or fasting periods. So it's definitely important to not try to wait it out with our cats when we're trying to make dietary changes. So yeah, lots more to be said on nutrition, but that's just kind of a rough entry point there to the fundamentals. Other thing that they tend to be very picky about is their litter boxes, and the general recommendation is to have plenty of them. So the recommendation is 1 litter box per cat plus 1 extra total. So if you had 2 cats, you'd have 3 litter boxes. 1 cat, you'd have 2 litter boxes. And which type of litter, which type of box is very individual. I find, there's cupboard boxes, there's boxes that like self-clean, and there's all kinds of different ones. And I find most cats like to have like 3 high sides and a low front on their box. Some like it to be more just like pan style, where there's a teeny tiny edge and they don't have to do much rigmarole to get into the box. Others kind of like a little cave. So you can kind of play around with what's working best. And if your kitty's seeming like they're not thriving in their litter box situation, if they're perched on the edge or if poop's going out the side or anything like that, then you can definitely kind of play around with different options. It's always worth intervening with any kind of litter box dissatisfaction early on, because we definitely find in the veterinary world that when kitties stop using their litter box, that becomes very, very taxing on their human families very quickly. So it's just very worth kind of troubleshooting that early on if you're finding that there's any kind of discontent around the litter box at all. Type of litter is also very key. I tend to find the low dust clay litters that are unscented are just kind of the favorite that I've seen, but some kitties prefer the pellets. Some kitties prefer, more like the softer shredded paper, that type of thing can be kind of on the outskirts as options. There's a lot of more sustainable litters now coming out where, for the people that are really environmentally conscious, trying to find an alternative substrate that is recycled material or something. And some cats do fine with that. So I think it's just kind of around problem solving or troubleshooting or exploring different options for your family, and just see what your kitty likes. there's pretty litters out there that like change colors, and there's some that are more synthetic. And I think fundamentally those just don't biodegrade as well. So I typically am not a fan, but I haven't done a lot of research in all that. So yeah, there's different options out there, more than you could ever even imagine, probably. And another topic I wanted to talk about for kitties is their need to scratch. They have a fundamental scratching need, and it's a big part of just them maintaining wellness in their physical bodies. They do a lot of stretching, and it's just a really complex actual activity for them when they scratch. And it's definitely something that I see them do as a joy outlet, and yeah, it's a good litmus test into their level of just ease and contentment, as is like grooming. So yeah, different types of scratching posts are favored by different kitties. Some like the cardboard, some like horizontal, some like vertical, some like upholstery, some like the little rolled rope ones. So just finding what your kitty likes, having a few different options, seeing what they go for, really, really important. And for kitties that are going for the furniture, I definitely I do not recommend declawing. It's a very extreme surgery where you're amputating their toe at the knuckle. And yeah, I pretty much can't think of any circumstance in which unless they had like a mass or, a broken toe that was irreparable or something, like there's no reason to do that. There's what are called, oh gosh, now I can't remember the name. They're the little caps that you glue on their toe, on their end of their nails, so that they can't do damage with their claws. So those are a really great option if you have a kitty that you need to mitigate any kind of possible scratching from. Cats that are declawed also do tend to feel more vulnerable and will bite more frequently. There's studies about that. So for people that are doing it out of this idea of like safety, that is actually a bit misguided, because cat bites are far worse than cat scratches, and declawed cats are far more likely to bite because they can't scratch, which is usually their primary defense mechanism. So yeah, the scratching is key. And the other thing is having elevated perches and different places for your kitty to go that they can get up to. They love, of course, those little perches that are in windows, and especially if it's in a multi-pet household or with other kitties, that is nice to make sure everybody has a place to go that's high up. They tend to feel safer if they can get high up. Some will hide under things too, but it's nice to have multiple options for them. And yeah, cats are actually very social beings, and they tend to do great if they're like adopted as litter mates or in multi-cat households. It can be tricky to introduce them to other cats as they get older, but if they start out that way and you can adopt two instead of one, that's actually great for those that might be considering getting a kitty. So yeah, I'm just kind of doing rapid fire on these topics, but the other thing I wanted to mention is just different kinds of water availability that they can have. So fountains for kitties that like running water, that's really great. Different kind of widths and depths of water. I see a lot of kitties like to kind of bat their water a little bit before they drink it. They really tend to like fresh water. So keeping that in mind, a couple different water stations that are fresh, that's really important for kitties, and goes into that kind of realm of like what I was talking about before, keeping them hydrated. So yeah, play is really important to cats, and it's tied into their instinctual hunting needs. So kitties are hardwired hunters. They're they're just very, very instinct driven to hunt, and it's a part of their essential selves to go through those motions. And I'm not suggesting we let our cats go hunt things willy-nilly. I think there can be a real problem with how, well, they don't hunt in the kindest ways. They tend to torture their little victims. And they can just decimate songbird populations. And of course, they're also exposed to pathogens and things in what they hunt. So, sometimes we can't help it. Even if they're indoor kitties, they're going to be mousing in the house and all that. And I think some humans really appreciate that. But yeah, fundamentally, I think we can help them kind of scratch that hunting itch by playing little hunting games with them. So how that looks is different. Some kitties love to chase like little mouse-shaped toys, or like chase things on a little string. Some like to, you can switch it up and do little food-based like freeze-dried treats that you kind of scatter everywhere, and they can go hunt those. But they're very, very play-motivated animals, and that is I think an essential need for them is play. So that is good about play. And the other thing I just wanted to touch on for kitties is about their vaccines. So cats they're sensitive to really everything. I mean, they are they're just little energy bodies. And for indoor kitties, they don't need all the vaccines. They're not going outside. They're not intermixing with other cats. And, except for maybe if they have a kitty family member, but they're in kind of a self-contained unit. So really just rabies is the only required vaccine. And I do recommend the non-adjuvant PureVax rabies line for cats. Cats can be they can be sensitive to vaccine-induced cancers. And so it's just very, very important to weigh their vaccines carefully in terms of need. I do typically have kitties go through their kitten series of FVRCP, and then if they're indoor only, I personally don't booster that again, unless their exposure risk is going to change. So yeah, that's I think about all I wanted to say in this little intro for kitties. They're so wonderful. They bring so much joy to our lives. They're such characters. And yeah, there's a lot to be said about cats, but that's a good kind of quick rundown and touching on all the major bullet points, I think. So thank you so much for being here and joining me. If you have any thoughts or wishes around topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know. I'm happy to take a pool of kind of hopes and dreams around what folks are wanting to hear about. So yeah, please reach out and let me know. And thank you again. Sending so much love and gratitude.